Good morning, all, and thank you for coming. I appreciate the opportunity to meet again with Foreign Secretary Villaray and Secretary of the Interior Osorio, and I also want to express my appreciation for the entire Mexican delegation who made the trip up to Washington, D.C. today for very, very useful and fruitful conversations. Also want to thank my colleague Secretary Kelly and the representatives of the Department of Homeland Security who participated today, as well as Treasury, who had participants here in our dialogue. Both Mexico and the United States are focused on destroying the criminal organizations that bring drugs into the United States and carry out violence across Mexico. We will keep our commitments to protecting our people from lawlessness, drugs, and criminal violence. Almost 20,000 Americans died from overdoses of heroin or synthetic opioids, including fentanyl, in 2015. An estimated 100,000 Mexicans have died in drug-related violence since 2006. Many of them brave members of law enforcement who died in the line of duty, and we honor their sacrifice. America must also confront the reality that we are the market. But for the seemingly endless demand by addicted users and the successful recruitment of young and vulnerable new users, there would be no market. We as American parents and friends of those who become addicted or would be targets must take new approaches as well. We Americans must own this problem. It is ours. Stopping the cross-border flow of drugs is an essential step in putting an end to widespread addiction and drug-related violence. Too many families in America have been devastated by illegal drugs, and we must stop this epidemic in its track. No parent should endure the nightmare of a child succumbing to drug addiction. By aggressively confronting the cartels operating in the United States and Mexico, we're striving to stop merchants of death who have already helped cause unspeakable pain to so many on both sides of the border. Today, we identified fresh strategies to attack the business model of these multi-billion-dollar criminal organizations, with particular emphasis on cash flow and the flow of weapons. We will work with Mexico to refocus assistance on better disrupting the business model of the traffickers. We will attack their means of production, their cross-border distribution networks, their cash flow, and their weapons procurement. The Trump administration's efforts to fight the demand for these devastating drugs and the criminal activity and drug trafficking at the Mexican border and elsewhere has only just begun. We will continue to partner with Mexico to disrupt and destroy the criminal organizations which threaten our citizens, our communities, and our country. And we will commit to addressing the pervasive demand for illicit drugs among our fellow citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Secretary Tillerson, for hosting us. Thank you, Secretary Kelly, for being here, and for to all the people involved from the U.S. government as well as the Mexican agencies that participated in this meeting today. Thank you very much. I will switch to Spanish in a moment to refer to the conversation that we just had here at the State Department. But before doing that, let me refer to something that just happened today, which is very important to the U.S.-Mexico relationship and to North America. And today, as you all know, the U.S. Trade Representative sent notice to the U.S. Congress about its intention to start the process of NAFTA renegotiation. The government of Mexico welcomes this development. We are prepared, we are ready, and this is to work together with both the governments of the U.S. and Canada to make our trade agreement better. Better for the people of Mexico, the people of the U.S., and the people of Canada. And, we understand that this is a 25-year-old agreement when it was negotiated. The world has changed. We've learned a lot, and we can make it better. we can make this a negotiation that is good for the three parties involved, certainly under a win-win framework. The Ministry of the Economy in Mexico, la Secretaría de Economía, will lead the process. We have a very capable negotiating team, and we'll approach this process constructively. And we are sure that this is going to be a step towards improving our relationships and building a future together. Now, if you allow me, I will switch to Spanish. El día de hoy damos un paso más en la construcción de una nueva relación bilateral entre México y Estados Unidos. Una relación amplia, profunda y sin duda compleja. Una relación que tiene muchas aristas y en todas ellas, desde una perspectiva integral, estamos trabajando. Así como en comercio hay un proceso que está en marcha, también nuestra cooperación en materia de seguridad y particularmente del combate a las organizaciones criminales que operan en ambos territorios y en otras regiones del mundo es una parte fundamental de nuestra cooperación. La conversación del día de hoy tiene su origen en conversaciones anteriores, particularmente el encuentro en el que tuvimos el honor de tener en México, en la Ciudad de México, a los secretarios Tillerson y Kelly, donde acordamos discutir este problema común desde una perspectiva de equipo y desde una perspectiva integral, entendiendo todos los componentes. El día de hoy fue una reunión de análisis, de compartir diagnósticos para construir una nueva estrategia compartida. Si bien no fue una reunión en la que hayamos alcanzado nuevos acuerdos, donde se hayan todavía desarrollado estrategias específicas, sí es una reunión en la que logramos tener coincidencias fundamentales en la naturaleza del problema, en nuestro diagnóstico y sobre todo en entender que tenemos que atacar de manera conjunta todos los eslabones de este modelo de negocios criminal. Tenemos que superar la asignación mutua de culpas, el señalamiento recíproco y entender que toda demanda crea oferta y toda oferta crea demanda. Y que si los gobiernos de México y Estados Unidos discuten quién es el responsable, quién está en falta, quién es el culpable, el único que gana es el crimen organizado que está trayendo violencia y muerte en ambos lados de la frontera. Es el momento en que nos atrevamos a pensar de una forma diferente, a confiar más en nosotros y a trabajar de manera conjunta en todos, repito, todos los eslabones de una cadena de producción, desde el cultivo, la importación de materiales, la distribución, el flujo financiero de efectivo, el flujo de armas y, por supuesto, el problema de la demanda que está en la raíz de este flagelo que nos cuesta tanto a ambas naciones. Vamos a seguir trabajando. Sin duda es un camino largo por recorrer, pero hoy hemos dado un paso muy importante al establecer de manera conjunta un diagnóstico y sobre todo un compromiso. Un compromiso de trabajar los dos gobiernos como un equipo para enfrentar este problema que es un problema de todos. Quiero agradecer a las distintas áreas del gobierno mexicano, por supuesto al secretario de Gobernación, pero aquí estuvieron representadas otras áreas de nuestro gobierno, como la Secretaría de Hacienda, la Procuraduría General de la República, el CISEN, como parte de este objetivo de alcanzar diagnósticos comunes y que seguirán participando de manera coordinada en este proceso. Y finalmente, quiero desde aquí hacer el más alto reconocimiento a las Fuerzas Armadas de México, que durante años han sido un pilar fundamental del combate a este tan grave fenómeno y que con su vida, con su esfuerzo, han dejado en evidencia su amor a la patria. Sabemos que contamos con ellos y desde aquí nuestra gratitud y nuestro mayor reconocimiento a su presencia y a su participación en esta acción fundamental. Muchas gracias, secretario Tillerson. Gracias, secretario Kelly.
Well, thank you for that. It's certainly a great pleasure for me to be meeting with our good friends again from Mexico. In my previous life, I served at as the Southcom commander. During that period of time, I built relationships with the government of Mexico, and particularly with the military and the police that serve Mexico. And I would like to add my voice to the minister's voice, to the secretary's voice about the brave men and women in the Mexican armed forces and police that have done so much to protect your country and to provide leadership in the region. You've lost many, many hundreds of men and women in this fight against these terrible scourges. One of my first stops, my first stop actually as the Secretary of Homeland Security was to Mexico City, as has been referenced, to meet with the Foreign Secretary, many others in the Mexican government, to include the President. We are in constant contact, my department is, with our counterparts in Mexico. And our people, Mexicans and Americans, work together every day, whether it's to deal with drug smuggling or human smuggling or terrorism. Our working relationship is vitally important, and it is a very, very good one. Part of that is because of our collaboration is built on co-responsibility. We must own the problems of cartels and the solutions to deal with those cartels. While the United States is indeed the magnet that feeds drug smuggling through Central and South America and all the ills that are associated with that activity, it is mostly our friends in Mexico and to the south that feel the brunt of the violence and the crime. We are attacking the cartels in many ways, including to attack their business models, attacking their financing, attacking their funding, attacking their ability to run a profitable criminal business. And it has been successful to a degree, and we will continue, as you've heard up here, we'll continue that, deepen it, and broaden it with some very, very innovative new ideas. Now, while the specific focus today was on the cartels and other aspects of the drug trade, this is an indication of the broad number of issues we, the United States and Mexico, work with together every day. I look forward to working with my Mexican friends later this summer when they are participating, indeed co-sponsoring a Central American Security and Prosperity Conference in Miami, where a wide range of security issues will be on the agenda, including transnational criminal organizations. This will be an opportunity to bring Mexico and their fantastic leadership team together on these issues as we deal with the problems of security and economic conditions in the Northern Triangle countries, and we'll try to address the regional threats to security and stability. We are excited. I am personally excited to have Mexico as a partner at that conference. And so I will close by saying thank you, Secretaries, and Rex Tillerson as well, for this opportunity to collaborate in this very, very important endeavor. Thank you.
Muy buenas tardes, secretario Tillerson, secretario Kelly, secretario Videgaray. El día de hoy, autoridades de ambos países, como ya se ha mencionado, hemos sostenido una reunión de seguimiento a uno de los temas más relevantes de nuestra agenda bilateral. Me refiero a las acciones conjuntas para combatir el crimen organizado relacionado con el tráfico de drogas. Dicho fenómeno representa uno de los principales riesgos para la salud, la seguridad y, por supuesto, para el desarrollo de las poblaciones de México y de Estados Unidos. Durante la reunión, los representantes de México hemos expuesto nuestra visión y experiencia en el combate al crimen organizado. Y derivado de ello, ambos países hemos coincidido en la urgencia de avanzar hacia un esfuerzo binacional más equilibrado, como lo ha mencionado el secretario Videgaray, e integral en el combate de esta actividad delictiva. Reconocemos la disposición y apertura y decisión de los secretarios Tillerson y Kelly para explorar nuevos esquemas para atender este problema. Hemos encontrado en ellos una visión compartida y un amplio espíritu de colaboración. Coincidimos en la necesidad de atender toda la cadena de distribución de drogas y combatir las redes criminales que operan en ambos lados de la frontera. Es una reunión que nos permite avanzar en el tema que compartimos, que nos genera violencia, que nos genera una disposición de recursos amplia y que si no logramos, como hasta ahora lo estamos haciendo, la coordinación efectiva y la confianza en el compartimiento de información, no podríamos avanzar. Yo creo que es una reunión que nos da un buen camino hacia el combate de uno de los temas más importantes de nuestra relación binacional. Muchas gracias, secretarios.
We'll open it up to questions now, and if you could please ask your question, direct your question to one minister at a time. We'll start first with Felicia Schwartz from the Wall Street Journal. Felicia.
Thank you. Secretary Tillerson, this is at least the third time that the president has made an announcement ahead of your talks with the Mexicans that could sour them. When you flew to Mexico, he said that he would deport all migrants there, which the Mexicans didn't appreciate. He signed an executive order about the wall when the foreign minister was in town, and then this morning told Congress that he'd renegotiate NAFTA. Are you going to be able to negotiate with Mexico when the president keeps stepping on your toes?
Okay.
Mr. Foreign Minister, are the Americans negotiating in good faith, and what did you say about NAFTA in your meetings?
Well, I hope what this morning's press avail with you is demonstrating is that there are a broad range of issues of great importance and common concern between the United States and Mexico. Obviously, trade is an important, extremely important issue, and I think the filing of the authorities with the Congress this morning to start moving towards fast-track authority is a very positive move. And I think it does demonstrate a sincere effort on the part of the President, and I'll leave it to those who will be involved directly in those discussions to comment in the future about those. But what I would tell you is I hope what you take away from today is an understanding that there is much more to the U.S.-Mexico relationship than just NAFTA. The wall does not define our relationship. We have so many areas of mutual interest, and I think the focus on transcriminal organizations, the focus on the devastating effect that drug trafficking, illicit trafficking of drugs, and other illicit trafficking through organized crime is affecting both of our countries in very tragic ways. And I think what we had in a spirit today of very open, very frank, very candid conversations about where we have succeeded in the past, what is standing in the way of our success in the future, and I think a very strong willingness, and you've heard this expressed, I think, in the comments of both secretaries from Mexico, very strong commitment to overcoming whatever those obstacles may have been in the past, whether it be in sharing of intelligence information, sharing of resources. We have one common objective here, and this is to end the tragic impacts of illicit drug trade on both sides of our border. We know what we own, and we as Americans need to confront that we are the market. There is no other market for these activities. It is all coming here. But for us, Mexico wouldn't have the transcriminal organized crime problem and the violence that they're suffering. And we really have to own up to that. So I think we've had very open, frank conversations. There are so many areas of cooperation between our two countries, and we're going to focus on those that we can make progress on now. And there will be other talks to make progress on other areas of importance, including the renegotiation, restructuring of NAFTA.
Let me just be really clear about this. We've been informed all along the way, at each and every step of the process of sending the notice that happened today, by the USTR, office, by the Department of Commerce, and by the White House. And let me say something else. This is something that we very much welcome, and this is a development that we've been waiting for quite some time. It's good news for Mexico, and we are willing and we are prepared to start a constructive negotiation once the 90 days period go by. This will be mid-August, and we're ready to go. So this is what happened today. What the USTR sent to Congress is something that is a significant net positive for the Mexico-U.S. relationship, and we will build upon that.
Ahora tiene la palabra José Díaz Briceño del periódico Reforma.
Thank you very much for doing this. Secretary Videgaray, the U.S. government continues to toy with the idea of splitting NAFTA into two bilateral agreements and not just one trilateral. Is this an option for Mexico? And Mr. Tillerson, journalists in Mexico are being killed at record numbers. This week, probably one of the most important reporters covering the drug trade was killed in Mexico. Will you raise this issue with the Mexican government of effectively prosecuting these crimes?
Gracias, José. El Tratado de Libre Comercio de América del Norte es un tratado trilateral y las conversaciones deben tener una naturaleza trilateral. Esa es nuestra posición. Y lo que hemos escuchado del gobierno de los Estados Unidos, particularmente del secretario de Comercio Wilbur Ross, es que Estados Unidos no tiene todavía una opinión formada o una preferencia al respecto. Nosotros sí tenemos una preferencia al respecto, que es que el acuerdo es trilateral y debe de continuar siendo una plataforma trilateral. ¿Por qué? Porque eso es lo que permite maximizar el potencial competitivo de la que debe de ser la región más productiva y más competitiva en el mundo, que es Norteamérica. Las cadenas de valor, particularmente en la manufactura, están fuertemente integradas y tener un marco común de comercio, sin duda, es la mejor plataforma para seguirlo impulsando. Hay que reconocer que incluso en el tratado actual existen aspectos del tratado que aplican únicamente de manera bilateral. Cada uno, por ejemplo, de los países excluyó en su momento, hace más de 20 años, algunos sectores del tratado. Hay sectores en México que tienen un tratamiento especial por el tratado. Esto implica que como parte de la negociación podría haber dentro del marco del tratado algunos tratamientos especiales de naturaleza bilateral entre México y Canadá, entre México y Estados Unidos o entre Estados Unidos y Canadá. Pero nuestra preferencia es clara. Creemos que el marco de un acuerdo trilateral es lo que más conviene a las tres economías y a los pueblos de Canadá, Estados Unidos y México.
With respect to the tragic death of the important journalist in Mexico, we offer our deepest condolences, certainly to the loved ones and the family members. And it is yet again another tragic loss among journalists, but also many others, as a result of the violence related to the illicit drug trade. I think in terms of how we address that, we had very good discussion about how do we improve the information sharing among law enforcement agencies on both sides of the border, because these cartels and organizations operate across the border as well. And we discussed how do we identify those organizational connections, how do we share information that will allow us to better identify who is responsible, have those people arrested and brought to justice. Similarly, we had discussions around how to strengthen the judicial system. And we know that Mexico has a draft law for consideration that would allow the seizure of property and assets of those who have been arrested and charged in the illicit drug trade. We have similar laws in this country, and we have encouraged Mexico to proceed with the enactment of that law as well. So there has been very good sharing among ideas on the law enforcement side as well, and the justice side. So we are working together cooperatively to attack the problem.
Rich Edson from Fox News.
Secretary Kelly and Secretary Tillerson, given the frequency with which you both interact with foreign counterparts, as evidenced by today, and much of what's involved in your everyday work, and given the investigations, the former FBI director's memo, and all that's happening domestically, ahead of the president's first foreign trip, with significant meetings scheduled with foreign leaders, has the president lost leverage or credibility, and have these issues hampered efforts that you have with international counterparts? Thank you.
Want to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
No. I would tell you, I just actually returned from a trip I took to Jordan and Saudi Arabia, and they are so looking forward in that part of the world to the arrival of the president and the gesture of where he's going first. I could say the same thing about the Israelis and others. I'll let the Secretary of State answer that. But no, I interact with a fairly large number of international players, most often by phone, but Europeans, Latin Americans, Central Americans, Africans, I mean, across the globe. And they are working with us as partners on a range of issues: aviation security, drugs, as you've heard here today, immigration. So I feel no effect from when the president is, say, taking the task in the press about something he may or may not have said, and certainly something he may or may not have meant. So, am I concerned about intelligence sharing? We share, and as I say, I interact with a great many foreign leaders at the ministerial level, my counterparts, and I share as much information with them as our laws allow. And they are open to that. In those places I cannot share more. They understand that and the fact that this country, my department, our president, has the safety of our citizens and their citizens number one in his mind.
I guess I would characterize the expectation among the rest of the world, and I've had the opportunity now to pretty well interact and meet with leaders from Europe to Russia to Central Asia to the Middle East to Africa to Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia. So I have a pretty good exposure now to globally to how the world is seeing the current administration. And what I would tell you is there is a great sense of expectation, and I think a great welcomeness of America returning to the scene. Many of the leaders, particularly in the part of the world we'll be traveling, the Middle East, Central Asia, and even parts of Africa, are ready for a period of what they view to have been neglect, to outright dismissal of their concerns. They're ready for re-engagement with America. And so I think there is a great anticipation of the president's trip as to what could be accomplished. And we, in our dialogues, have identified much that can be accomplished when we work together. And that is the purpose of this trip, is really one of conveying a message that America is back in terms of our role as a convener, our role as a facilitator to address the daunting challenges that exist in that part of the world, most particularly the challenge of global terrorism and how we confront global terrorism as a global people's. It is not just one nation's challenge. It is one that's shared by all of us. And I think the importance of this trip and President Trump's leadership around bringing people the world over to understand we are in this together. This is not a battle about religions. This is not a battle about cultures. This is a battle about good and evil. And the goodness of people of all faiths will prevail over this evil. And that is the president's message he'll be taking, and he will be convening people globally to confront this face of evil wherever it presents itself in the world. There's a great anticipation around that leadership.
And there's no domestic distraction will bring them?
I think the people in the rest of the world do not have the time to pay attention to what's happening domestically here. They are more concerned about what they see happening in the relationship with their country and what we are bringing to address these very serious challenges that are affecting all of us.
Rich, thank you.
La última pregunta está a cargo de Rubén Barrera, de Notimex, por favor.
Thank you. Secretario Osorio, mi primera pregunta es para usted. Quisiera ver si nos puede usted explicar un poco más exactamente a qué se refiere cuando dice usted que quisiera ver un esfuerzo binacional más equilibrado y cuáles serían los cambios potenciales que podrían darse en la manera como el gobierno mexicano está combatiendo a los grupos del crimen organizado a partir de estos esfuerzos que se inician hoy aquí en Washington. And for you, Secretary Kelly, the Trump administration has been talking a lot about the drop in illegal crossings because of the policy that President Trump has announced on the immigration front. But we have not heard anything regarding drugs. My question is why, and if can we expect to see a significant drop on drug seizures across the south border after the wall is finished, maybe by the end of this administration?
Cuando hace un momento terminamos o estuvimos durante el proceso de diálogo, hablamos de los costos que tiene para Estados Unidos y para México el tema de las drogas. Costos en pérdidas de vidas en Estados Unidos por el consumo y costos en pérdidas de vida por el combate que se hace de nuestras Fuerzas Armadas, de la Policía Federal y de diferentes corporaciones con la delincuencia organizada. Y entonces no pueden tomarse solamente acciones del lado de México o solo acciones de Estados Unidos. Tiene que haber acciones contundentes de ambos países, por eso hablo de equilibrio. Tenemos que compartir mejor información y tenemos que llegar a acuerdos que trasciendan a lograr que estos grupos no encuentren un mercado a donde llegar y, por supuesto, desde México, que es parte de también el problema, que la producción se siga dando. Entonces, ese es el equilibrio que tenemos que lograr y tiene que darse a partir de esta negociación integral de la que ha hablado el canciller Videgaray, que es la posición del gobierno mexicano. Una de las partes es la seguridad. Tenemos que ir avanzando en esa parte porque si no pareciera que no nos está importando atender de manera inmediata el tema que sigue dejando consecuencias en pérdidas de vida y por eso es que hoy es un diálogo en el que pusimos en la mesa toda la problemática de ambos lados y cómo podemos encontrar alternativas que nos permitan ir a profundidad en la solución de este problema.
Yeah, on the issue of the smuggling of drugs into the United States, we already do a great deal at the border, and not alone. We do it with our Mexican counterparts to the south. The vast majority of hard drugs, methamphetamines, cocaine, and heroin, come up smuggled primarily in vehicles, trucks, that kind of thing. Oftentimes with the, particularly in the commercial trucks, oftentimes the driver doesn't even know they're in there. So the first point, let me start at the end. The end is to get after the TCOs, the transnational criminal organizations, the networks in Mexico and in the United States. That's the last thing. The first thing we need to do, because it generates all of the problems, and that is the drug demand in the United States. And not only the drugs that are used by addicts, but the recreational use of drugs. You know, if Americans understood that playing around with drugs on a weekend for fun ultimately ends or results in the lives lost in Mexico by law enforcement and by the military, or lives lost in Colombia or Central America. If Americans understood that recreational playing around with drugs is resulting in the deaths of reporters and media people, throughout the region, but particularly, unfortunately, in Mexico right now. Police officers, as they say, soldiers, prosecutors, judges. If Americans that use drugs recreationally understood that and stopped doing that, that would significantly reduce the amount of drugs and consequently the amount of profits that come out of the United States. So the most important thing we can do is reduce the drug demand. We've never tried it. We've never done it. We have to develop a comprehensive drug demand reduction program in the United States that involves everybody. Involves professional sports, Hollywood, involves governors, mayors, involves parents, priests, involves everybody. We can reduce the amount of drugs consumed in the United States significantly. Never go to zero, but we can reduce it. But until we do, we'll be fighting at best a neutral battle on the border. The drug traffickers are extremely agile, extremely innovative in how they do business, incredibly brutal. If you won't take their bribes and their money, they'll kill your daughter and make their point that way. So it's all about drug demand and drug demand reduction.
So what feel the necessity to feel the war? What do you need to do to change that?
No, the physical barriers work. Where there are 650 miles of physical barrier already on the southwest border between the United States and Mexico. All of that built previous to this administration. So there is use for physical barriers. There's also use for technology. There's, to say the least, there's use in terms of the collaboration between Mexican authorities and U.S. authorities. And then obviously it's all about people that patrol, talk to each other, police actions on both sides of the border. So there's no one single solution to this. It's a multifaceted problem, and it needs multifaceted solutions.
Thank you. That's all we have time for.
Se fuera up.